At Marymount Town Hall for February 2023. We're going to review the following topics today, but first we're going to start with a mission moment. Give me a second to get the right thing up. All right, is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
All right. All right, so that just reminds us about why we're here and what our mission is. So I want to start off with abuse, neglect, exploitation, and misappropriation of residents' property. We all have we all need to make sure that we're keeping our residents safe and no one is abused, neglected, exploited, and that their possessions are kept safely. So if we think that somebody is subject to abuse, neglect, exploitation, or something's been stolen, that needs to be reported immediately. We do have, in some instances, only 2 hours to report something where somebody's been harmed. So it's not something you can wait until you're done with your med pass or done cleaning a room and then go tell your supervisor. Because at that point, by the time they finish something and it gets to Dan, Chris, or myself, we're limited in the amount of time that we have to really look at something and determine what our reporting requirements are. And we don't necessarily want to report things we don't have to, because it takes time and a lot of effort to go through the investigation process and do the reporting that the state requires. So if we can use those 2 hours to determine what happened and backtrack and talk with staff, and don't need to report something that actually saves everyone a lot of time of writing statements and things like that. What do I do if I see or hear or am suspicious of something? The first thing that we all need to do is make sure the resident is safe. That is utmost first thing. If you hear something, somebody talking inappropriate to a resident, you need to intervene, get that resident to someplace where they're going to be safe and not subjected to, abuse, neglect, or exploitation. And then the next thing we already talked about, which is reported immediately. Here are some things that may or may not be forms of abuse. An unknown bruise on a resident. Maybe we don't know exactly how that bruise occurred, but it's on the wrist or forearm, and we go back in the chart and we look and see the resident has a blood draw. But in another case, maybe there's bruises that look like fingers around somebody's wrist. That's a different situation and something that needs immediate reporting, because that may have been from somebody grabbing their wrist. Maybe it's not staff, could have been another resident, but we definitely need to take a look at what would have happened. A resident yelling obscenities at another resident. Again, it does depend on the situation, but it's definitely something we need to take a look at. A resident missing money. If the resident can tell us something like, I put it in my Kleenex box and my Kleenex box got thrown out, we know what happened to the money, and it's not an issue of stealing. Or maybe they say, yeah, it was in my pocket and I wheeled outside and took a walk with my family. I think it might have fallen out. But if they're saying, I think somebody took it or somebody specific took it, that's something that does need to be reported. A picture of a resident on a staff member's Instagram account or TikTok or Facebook. None of those things are okay. And that is definitely something that needs to be reported. We don't have that ability unless, that's a family member that to be posting things about other residents. Not feeding a resident. This definitely can be a form of neglect because we have the power and residents need our help. So if we say to them, we're not going to help you eat, that is an issue. A resident visitor or a visitor yelling at a resident. This can be a form of abuse depending on what the situation is. Obviously, some residents you need to talk very loud to and they don't want hearing aids. And it does sound like screaming. But if somebody is belittling a resident, really yelling at them, making them fearful, whether it's their family, friend, doesn't matter. That is something that we need to intervene on and is a form of abuse. In 1987, nursing homes were required to care for their residents in a way that maintained each person's ability to make choices and manage their own lives. And that's where residents' rights came from. Residents have the right, like we do out in the community, they have legal and moral rights. We need to promote their dignity and self-determination. They have the right to choose their own physician. They have the right to be treated with dignity and respect and consideration at all times. They have some of the basic rights we have out in the community. They have the right to vote, and RAS and activities set that up for them. They have the right to privacy. They have the right to be informed about changes in their care plan, changes in a room or a roommate, the right to ombudsman services and state survey agency information in a language and a method that they understand. They have the right to have a copy of the residents' rights. They have a right to complain, whether that's to us, the ombudsman, or to the state health department, and they have a right to do so without fear of retaliation or discrimination. They also have the right to expect a quick response to their complaint or concerns, and they have the right to be treated with dignity, respect, and freedom. Freedom from abuse, neglect, exploitation, and misappropriations of property, and they can exercise their rights without interference, discrimination, or harm. The Elder Justice Act was a law that came about that brought all of these things. And then It also focused on reporting of crimes in a facility. So this is where the 2-hour reporting for a serious bodily harm came from. We have 24-hour reporting requirements for other things that haven't resulted in serious bodily harm. Who do you report to? We have to report to the state survey agency and law enforcement. Staff on the floors reports to their supervisors and Dan, Chris, and I. We can't hire somebody who has violated the Elder Justice Act, and there are certain things that are excluded from allowing somebody to work in a nursing home. And there's postings about this in the facility, and we need to give that information to our residents. There is something that called the Assisted Living Code of Ethics. Assisted living is not a federal program. It's a state-run program. So the Ohio Department of Aging makes it a condition of participation in the assisted living program through this code of ethics. And we're required to adopt and implement ethical standards to require workers to provide services in a professional, respectful, and legal manner, and not to engage in any unprofessional, disrespectful, or illegal behavior. And all departments and employees are required to follow those guidelines. All right, Mark, do you want to talk a little bit about dementia?
Yes, we are going to talk about a few different types of dementia and some of the different characteristics of people living with dementia. So, dementia is a chronic or persistent disorder of the mental processes caused by brain disease or injury and marked by memory disorders, personality changes, and impaired reasoning. Alzheimer's dementia is the first one we're going to discuss today, and up to 80% of people with dementia fall into this category. If someone you know has Alzheimer's, you will notice symptoms like memory loss, trouble planning and doing familiar tasks. The symptoms are usually mild at first, but they do get worse over a number of years. And those symptoms could include being confused about what time of day it is or even what time of year it is. They may have problems speaking or writing. They will lose things, and if they misplace an item, it is unlikely they will be able to backtrack and find what it is they're looking for. They often show poor judgment, and you will notice mood and even personality changes with Alzheimer's. So another type of dementia is vascular dementia. This is typically due to an injury, a stroke, or maybe even someone having multiple strokes. Symptoms of vascular dementia include, again, memory problems, which is that's going to be with any type of dementia. There are going to be memory issues. Their memory issues may disrupt daily life. They will have trouble speaking and even understanding speech. They can have problems recognizing sights and sounds that used to be familiar. Vascular dementia residents may get a little more agitated than other residents with different types of dementia. There will be personality changes or moods, and they will also, these are residents that often have frequent falls and have difficulty walking. So a third type that we're going to talk about today is Lewy body dementia. Lewy bodies are microscopic deposits of protein that form on the brain or in the brain. If someone you know has Lewy body, it's because these deposits have formed in the part of the brain called the cortex. Symptoms with Lewy body dementia include problems thinking clearly, problems making decisions or paying attention. Again, they will have memory trouble. They may have hallucinations, visual hallucinations. They may see things that they are convinced are there that aren't there. Um, they will have unusual sleepiness during the daytime.
Sorry.
That's okay. periods of blanking out or staring. So you may see somebody with Lewy body that sort of looks like they're sort of just staring off into space. Um, these residents may have problems with movement. There may be trembling, slowness, or trouble walking also, and dreams where they act out physically, including talking, walking. And these residents can sometimes get so agitated that they can get a little bit violent. Sometimes they're kicking. So, what are some tips for working with residents with dementia? We really want to try to establish a relationship. Um, we want to respond emotionally. These are residents that we can take by the hand, put our arm around, and really try to connect with. Um, we need to understand that memory loss and confusion is not a choice, obviously. The person with dementia is always right. And what that means is arguing with somebody with dementia is it's not all that's going to do is get that person more frustrated. And so what we mean by they're always right, we know that they in reality may not be right, but we will use uh, a tactic called therapeutic fibbing, which is they may be convinced, for example, that their daughter is coming to visit, and that's why they won't come to the dining room and they won't leave their room because they're waiting for their daughter. When we might know that their daughter lives out of town and that we know that the daughter is not coming that day, it is okay in a case like that to say, your daughter called and she won't be coming today. So come out to the dining room. Why don't you come and get something to eat? That sort of fibbing is okay. They like to help their caregivers, so we often give them tasks like folding laundry or sorting socks or things like that. But again, with dementia, with our residents with dementia, we want to respond in an emotional way.
All right, thanks, Mark. Brenda, do you want to talk about discrimination and harassment?
Yes, so our policy is to provide an equal employment opportunity to all staff members and applicants that is free of discrimination and harassment. And this policy does extend to our entire employment relationship. We were able to find three short videos that really go over this information well. So this next video will be going over harassment. And then the last one is going over the LGBTQ community.
All right. Any comments, Brenda?
We just want to go over the reporting procedures. So immediately report any known, suspected, or alleged incidents of discrimination, harassment, or other similar actions to your immediate supervisor or human resources. All complaints of unequal treatment will be fully investigated, and corrective action will be taken quickly. Retaliation of any kind is strictly prohibited.
All right, thank you. Ron, I think you're up next.
Thank you, Sue. About 5 years ago, an interdisciplinary team convened to create a customer service program. The team agreed upon the acronym HOPE, which stands for Helping Others Pursue Excellence, as it has a faith-based component in line with our mission. We have reinstituted the HOPE training program in our weekly orientation, and we are excited to get this training back up to speed. One of the goals of the program, or the primary goal, is to really create positive, memorable moments. You notice in the acronym we use the term others, and that means not just the resident, but each other. We want to serve as each other's customers and offer good customer service, not just to the residents, but it's in the way we treat others. And we really want to give that clarity of customer service expectations, reinforce the great trust this campus has, and we want to promote or give staff, tools to meet those customer service expectations. Just some quick customer service tips. Maintaining eye contact is very important when you're dealing with one of the residents. The way you approach them, try to be understanding when listening to and addressing their needs, and address the needs in an immediate with an immediate response. A smile is always helpful. Be apologetic if it's appropriate, and try to do a good job listening to the concern the resident may have. So when communicating with our residents and representatives, look for verbal cues that may impede good communication. Oftentimes, if a resident may say they don't want something, if you do ask if you can do something for them, but if you notice the tone of voice maybe trail off a little bit, perhaps they want something and they're just not telling you. And some of these examples can be vision. That could be a barrier. Hearing, a resident in pain, having used the bathroom, confusion. These are just signs to look for that may impede communication with a resident. Why we focus on customer service is pretty simple. We do not want to lose good employees like each of you. Our customer base certainly suffers. We do thrive on a lot of repeat business. Here at the Village at Marymount, you'll see some of the same faces that may have been here a few years ago, back from maybe another procedure or additional rehab. So we really want to keep the good vibe going with our customers and with our residents. Our profitability suffers if we do not provide good customer service. It leads to empty beds, and that can lead to shift cuts and reduction in hours, and nobody wants that to occur. So again, the importance of good communication. It does help to diffuse conflict when you're in a room with maybe an angry or an upset resident and family member. Learning techniques to diffuse that conflict goes a long way to resolving the issue equitably. It earns trust and respect, reduces misunderstandings, and it illustrates a caring attitude. And more importantly, it reduces the recurrence of these incidents from happening again. We want to learn from our mistakes. And these are just a few of the some phrases that maybe you catch yourself saying that we may want to steer away from. Example, I don't know. Okay, that's not part of my job. We don't have enough staff. Residents don't want to hear these at all. They view them as excuses and maybe delays in delivering quality care. We do a lot of surveying of our residents, and one of the top complaints or concerns that we get is that they're saying you will be back and not coming back. We get that a lot. Staff will come in and turn off a call light, and we have a policy in place that do not turn off a call light until the resident's concern has been addressed.
All right, so COVID updates. The county is actually back to red. When we wrote this a week or so ago, we were in orange. So we kind of bounce back and forth week to week between orange and red right now. We are seeing increased cases, both at the hospital and here within our campus. All visitors and staff still need to be wearing masks. We have extended our visiting hours and are flexible with our visitors. We know it's been really hard over these last couple years, and if somebody falls or isn't having a good evening or whatever, there's no reason we can't let families in to try to calm them, to reassure those families that their loved one is okay and things like that. We continue to offer booster clinics. The next one will be 2 weeks from then March 9th. VSJ patients continue to need to be tested on days 1, 3, and 5 after admission. And right now on campus, we do have a positive resident at Marymount Place. They just completed some additional testing over there today. Again, it's March 9th. So hopefully we won't see anything additional there. At Villa, we've had one resident on CCU along with 2 staff members there. None of the cases seem to be related. And then in memory care, we currently have 2 residents. The first one did not seem to be related to any of our staff or residents. The second one does sit closer to the first resident, and those 2 are most likely linked. So in the areas with cases, we obviously need to be wearing full PPE if we're working with a resident with COVID, and we are continuing to isolate in place. Staff should be wearing N95s and face shields if we have cases on a particular unit. So right now, that would be our CCU unit as well as our MCU unit. I just want to remind everyone about hand washing. This is our single best way to prevent the spread of just about all infections. So that includes COVID and MRSA and even C. diff and all of those things. You need to wash your hands, and you need to use soap. You need to make sure you're rubbing your hands together for 20 seconds, that you're rinsing them thoroughly and drying them, because those are all important steps in proper hand washing. If things are visibly dirty or soiled, or you come in direct contact with blood or body fluids, again, you need to wash your hands. Using gloves does not replace hand washing. And if you do come in direct contact with blood or body fluids or secretions on non-intact skin, then you need to report that to us so we could do the proper follow-up. What to do if the Ohio Department of Health comes in over the weekend or on an after-hours shift? One, the first thing you need to do is let the supervisor know, and we need to escort the surveyors to the second floor conference room on M2. While the supervisor is doing that, a staff member needs to let all the departments know that state's in the facility. If it's after hours or on a weekend, that means they're calling myself, Dan, Chris, or Peggy. And you just need to call one of us, whoever you get. We will make sure the rest of the group is aware and will be in as soon as we can. Send an email to all staff so that every department knows, and all of those people with email knows that Ohio Department of Health is in the facility for a survey. Let us know. Is it an annual? Is it a complaint? Each department should know what needs to be done and start double checking and making sure things are survey ready, just as we've been preparing for months and months and months. And in some areas, we've been preparing for years because we know our ALs haven't been surveyed in a long, long time. Stay calm, and they may want to go start touring the units or go to the kitchen. Those are usually 2 places that they go right away and are on their list of things to do even prior to entrance. Additional updates, we've been working with our Wellstone group, that's Dove, Stephen, David, Michael, and Charlie, to get them oriented to our facility. If you see any of that group in, please stop and say hello and introduce yourself. They're really trying to get to know all our staff. We've also had Azra join us, and she is the Chief Nursing Officer and is working with Peggy and her group. We also are working on two main areas to improve financial performance, improving revenues. So that's things like our managed care contracts, and then also working to reduce contracted expenses, food supply costs, pharmacy, lab, x-ray, pest control, utilities, all of those kinds of things. So those areas are their focus. Just a reminder, summer is coming, and if you remember from the last couple years, Chris always talked about being on the beach with her mango margaritas. Who wouldn't like that? So there are referral bonuses in place, and if you refer a nurse or an STNA, please make sure they put you down as the referral source so we can pay out your referral bonus. Licensure reminders for STNAs, it's your responsibility to make sure you're getting your hours so that we can put you on the registry. RNs and LPNs, you each have your year, making sure you've obtained enough CEUs to renew your license. STNAs, again, enough hours educationally. That includes our town hall and things on your units or in your department. And you can't work unless you have a current license. It doesn't matter that you forgot to renew it yesterday and you're here to work today and you're going to do it right now. You have to have a current license. So you need to be renewing before your due date. You also need to make sure you're current with CPR certification. You cannot participate in a code blue if you're not CPR certified. All right, that will end our town hall main part, and we're going to end there, and there'll be a separate recording for our nursing portion. Thank you all for attending. We do have a quiz that everyone needs to see, and we also need to let you know that there's a form for our annual TB assessment. So those things, if you're getting this by email or seeing it in Paycor, you'll need to make sure that both the quiz and the TB test are completed and turned back into HR. Mark, Brenda, and Ron, anything else that we forgot?
Not on my end.
Yep, I think we're good.
All right,
Absolutely.
thanks everyone.